All right, gang. For learning target number 11, we're just going to go through the answers, and then after we've gone through the answers, I'm going to explain how I got each answer. For learning target 11, question number 1, least common type of vegetation is coniferous forest. 3 countries it is found in: Morocco, Algeria, and Libya. Question number 2, south of the equator, north of Capricorn, only one type of vegetation. You should have Zambia and tropical grassland. And then question number 3, what physical feature has most of the population? That would be the Nile River. What vegetation zone? That would be broadleaf evergreen forest, which allows for plants, crops, water, and all manner of things that support life. And then question number 4 for learning target number 11, there was a small typo there that might have thrown you off. That should say between 4 and 8 million. Sorry about that, but that should be in Nairobi, Kenya, because it meets all of basically the requirements laid out here. Kenya is between 4 and 8 million people. It has nomadic herding and commercial farming. There are different seashores like Lake Victoria and lake shores rather, like Lake Victoria, etc., etc. So now let's go through how to find the answers for all of those. So question number 1, what is the least common type of vegetation found in Africa, and where is it found? So we need 2 different maps for this. We need the vegetation map and then a political map. So we're going to start with the vegetation map of Africa. I'm going to pull this aside here. And I apologize, first of all, for the colors on this. That might make it a little bit tricky trying to figure out everything here. I myself am actually colorblind or color deficient. I found out in 4th grade. And so I feel your pain if you're struggling with this map. But as we look at the vegetation zones, I really want us to key in this upper area here of Africa. And as we look at it closely, we see in a couple of spots there is very minimal vegetation. There's one type of vegetation that is found there. And as we look closely there, we can see little green blotches. And we check those little green blotches, and we see that is coniferous forest in this upper area here. And we see 1, 2, 3 countries. And so we need to figure out what those 3 countries are. And so to do that, we check a political boundaries map, and that we see is Morocco, Algeria, and Libya. And so that's where, for question number 1, we get coniferous forest, Morocco, Algeria, and Libya. Question number 2, which country south of the equator and north of the Tropic of Capricorn contains only one type of vegetation? So we're going to actually head back to our vegetation map, and first of all, we need to find the equator, which is here, and we need to go south, which is that way. But we're north of the Tropic of Capricorn, which is that way. So we know that we're somewhere in this range here. And we see a lot of what appears to be tropical grassland right here, a lot of tropical grassland based on this map here. And what we can see is if we look in this area right here, we see one country that only has one type of vegetation in that region. And so then again, we check our political map, and when we check our political map, we can see the outline here. And when we check that map, we see that, in fact, Zambia is the only country that has just tropical grassland, and that's where we get our answer of Zambia and tropical grassland. Question 3, along which physical feature is most of the population of Egypt located? How does vegetation help to explain that? Well, for that, we would start with a physical features map. But we also need a population density map because it's asking us, and in fact, we might even need a political map. So let's start there first, right? Because first of all, we need to find just where the heck Egypt is. And to do that, we see that Egypt is located right here on our political map. Now, on a physical features map, we need to figure out what physical feature has a lot of population in Egypt. So now we're going to check both our physical features map and our population density maps. And as we check both our physical features maps and our population density map, let's actually start with our population density map because we got to figure out where most people in Egypt are located. And we see this little squiggle right through Egypt. And as we check our population density key, we see that that purple and that orangish color that we see up here in Egypt, we see that's where most of the people are. In fact, we also see 2 major cities. We see Alexandria and Cairo, so we see some large cities. We see a high population density. So we know most of Egypt is located right along here, but what physical feature is there? Well, if we check our physical features map, we look in closely here, and it might be kind of hard to see the blue on green, but we check that physical feature, and we see that's actually the Nile River. In fact, the Nile River, it starts here in Lake Victoria. This might blow your mind. It starts here, and it flows north. Yeah, we think of large rivers like the Mississippi River is flowing from like north to south, but no, the Nile River actually flows from Lake Victoria, higher elevation, and it flows downhill because water flows downhill, and in this case it happens to flow north. But back to our question, instead of that little known aside, we see that what physical feature, well, that is of course the Nile River is where most of the population of Egypt is located, and further we need to figure out then what vegetation is there and how does that help explain it. So there again we've got 3 maps of Egypt that are kind of showing us, we've got our population showing us most of the people, we have our Nile River, and then we got to check our vegetation map. And when we check our vegetation map, we see a certain type of vegetation along here, and we see that that vegetation is mostly broadleaf evergreen forest. And so how does that help explain it? Well, broadleaf evergreen forest, that's lush green plants that's suitable for farming. And so how does that help explain why most people live along the river? Well, there's plants, there's crops you can grow, there's water that will be there, and there's also animals that you can eat and munch on, like fish and other things. So there you go, that's number 3. And then lastly, question number 4. This one is going to require you to use all of the maps. Like I said, there is a typo. So we see the major city is between 4 and 8 million people. We see that it has nomadic herding. We see that there's commercial farming. There's seashores, there's lake shores, and a variety of climates. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of clues here. And so just how do we figure it out? Well, I know that based on seashores and lake shores, it's probably somewhere on the edge of Africa. That's something we can safely assume. And then based on the population density map, we know that it's between 4 and 8 million people in terms of their major city. And so that, you know, as we check our population density map, we're looking for that medium-sized dot there between 4 and 8 million people. And so we see, you know, it could be maybe something like Cape Town or Johannesburg, Luanda, Nairobi, Accra, Abidjan, Alexandria. There's a few different options there, right? So we know that it's probably going to be in one of these areas as we narrow that down. But we also know that there's commercial farming. And so we check our economic activity map of Africa. And on that economic activity map, under land use, we look for commercial farming, and that's this orangish color. And so we see a little bit through here, a little bit through here, and a little bit through here. We know we need that. We know that we also need commercial farming and nomadic herding, which is this lightish brownish color that we see in a few spots. And as we get closer, we see that lightish brownish color in places that have lake shores and seashores and commercial farming. We're starting to narrow it down because nomadic herding only occurs in a few of these spots. All right. And so now we're starting to get clued in here. Oh, my lights went out. I'll be back. There we go. They're back on. And I'm starting to get a hunch here. We've got some commercial farming. We've got some nomadic herding. We've also got, in this case, a city of 4 to 8 million people in Nairobi. We also have to check the climate, though, because we see that there's a variety of different climates, and we see that areas of my country are dry during certain parts of the year. And so as we check our climate zone here, Kenya does have a variety of different climates, but it also has this tropical wet and dry climate, which means that there are basically rainy seasons and dry seasons. And so as we go ahead, that really narrows it down, that really focuses it, and that really tells us that it's probably Nairobi, Kenya. Let's fact check that. Major city is between 4 and 8 million people. Check. Like many people, I am a nomadic herder. Check. They have nomadic herding. My friends work in commercial farms. They have commercial farming. There's another check. My country has seashores and lake shores. Well, let's check our physical features map. We've got seashore and lakeshore. There's a check. My country has a variety of climates, including areas that are dry during certain parts of the year. Well, that's right here as well, a variety of climates, and our tropical wet and dry. Check, check, and check. Nairobi, Kenya checks all the boxes, and that's why Nairobi, Kenya is your answer to number 4. Now, you might have come up with some other answers, and if it checks all the boxes, you're good to go there as well. So there again, that's how we use our variety of different thematic maps. The key to that, of course, is just going slow, taking your time, looking at the maps closely, checking the key, and just really double checking your work. Best of luck. Talk to you later. See ya.